My name is Babra, and if you told me 3 years ago that the woman who once called me, a mistake her son would regret, would later beg me for a job, I'd have laughed in disbelief. But life has a way of humbling people. The first time I met Elaine, my fiancé's mother, I was genuinely excited. Daniel and I had been together for nearly 2 years and things were getting serious. He'd always spoken of her as this strong, polished woman, successful, respected, intimidating in a charming sort of way. I wanted her to like me. I wanted to belong. So when he said, "Mom can't wait to meet you," I took it as a good sign. I wish I knew then that what she meant by meet you was actually measure you. We met at a high-end restaurant, one of those places where the napkins are folded like origami and the waiters speak in whispers. I remember walking in, clutching my handbag like it was armor. Elaine was already seated. Pearls, perfect posture, that air of someone who'd never had to rush for anything. She looked up as I approached and smiled, but her eyes didn't. "Ah, so this is Babra," she said, like she was examining a menu item she didn't remember ordering. I smiled nervously. "It's so lovely to finally meet you, Mrs. Porter." She gave a light laugh. "Oh, please, call me Elaine. Mrs. Porter makes me sound old." Then came the pause, that heavy silence where someone decides how they really feel about you, and they let you see it. "Daniel tells me you're a designer," she said. "Yes, I run my own firm. It's small but growing." MHM, a sip of wine. "That's cute." That word, cute, stung more than I wanted to admit. Throughout dinner, she asked questions that weren't really questions. Do you find it difficult supporting yourself on creative work? Your parents, are they from around here? Does Daniel help you financially at all? Each one dipped in sugar, served with a side of judgment. I tried to stay polite, but Daniel could feel my discomfort. When I excused myself to the restroom, I overheard her whisper to him as I walked away. "She's sweet, darling, but she's not one of us." That sentence, those 4 words, they carved something inside me. From that night on, things were never the same. Elaine made it clear, through smiles, through silence, through her carefully orchestrated absence, that I didn't belong. I wasn't the type of woman she'd imagined for her son. To her, love was supposed to come with status, background, a pedigree, and I was none of that. Daniel tried to defend me. "She just needs time," he said, but time didn't change anything. The real breaking point came 6 months before the wedding. Elaine hosted a family gathering at her estate. Her words, not mine. When I arrived, everyone else seemed to know each other. Executives, wives in designer heels, laughter that sounded more like networking than joy. I walked over to greet Elaine, and she looked me up and down, my simple emerald dress, the one I'd saved up to buy. "Oh, Babra," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look comfortable." That's when I knew she wasn't just judging me, she was testing me. The rest of the night was a blur of subtle humiliations. She introduced me to people as Daniel, creative girlfriend, as if my career was a hobby. She mentioned her friends, daughters, doctors, lawyers, investment bankers, each time looking at me for a reaction. I kept smiling, but inside something was unraveling. After that night, she began calling Daniel privately, telling him to think carefully. That marriage was about building alliances. That love without logic was a recipe for regret. One evening, Daniel came over looking pale. "Mom thinks we should postpone the wedding," he said quietly. I didn't even argue. I just nodded. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting for love. I was fighting for dignity. So I did the only thing I could control, my work. I poured every ounce of pain, rejection, and determination into my business. Late nights, missed birthdays, coffee instead of meals. Within a year, my small design studio became a recognized creative agency. By year 2, we had corporate clients, the kind Elaine probably bragged about knowing. And while my heart still ached from what she'd said, my success became its own quiet revenge. Then one day, a Tuesday, I remember my assistant buzzed in. "Babra, there's someone here to see you," she said. "Do they have an appointment?" She says it's urgent. Her name's Elaine Porter. I froze. I thought I'd misheard. Elaine. When she walked into my office, she wasn't the woman I remembered. No pearls. No poise. Her clothes were neat but tired, her hands trembling slightly as she clutched her bag. She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time. "Babra," she said softly, "I was hoping we could talk. I need a job." And just like that, every word she'd ever said to me, every insult, every dismissal came rushing back. "Women like you don't marry into families like ours. You're not one of us." Only now, she was the one standing in my office. For a few seconds, I couldn't even speak. Elaine, the woman who once told her son that I wasn't good enough for their family, was standing in front of me in my office asking for help. It felt unreal, like watching a movie where the roles suddenly reverse and you don't know whether to laugh, cry, or walk out. I gestured for her to sit. She hesitated, as if sitting on the other side of my desk might somehow make everything real. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning the sleek furniture, the framed awards, the logo on the wall, the company name that I had built from scratch. "You've done well for yourself," she said finally. "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Silence hung between us. Then she exhaled. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't desperate, Babra." It was strange hearing her say my name like that, gently, almost pleading. The same name she used to stretch like a criticism. "What happened?" I asked. She clasped her hands together. "After Daniel's father passed, the company started struggling. I thought I could handle things, but the board replaced me. I lost my seat. Then the market crash hit. The house, the business, it's all gone." Her voice cracked on that last word, gone. I looked at her. This woman who had once stood so tall was now small, humbled. The pearls were gone, replaced with the raw, fragile truth of someone who had run out of pride to hide behind. "I heard your firm expanded," she continued. "You're hearing senior consultants." That's when it hit me. She wasn't just here for sympathy. She was here for survival. In that moment, 1,000 memories flashed through my mind, her dismissive smile at dinner, her words dripping with superiority, her whisper to Daniel, "She's sweet, but not one of us." And now, here she was, asking to join me. I wanted to lash out. I wanted to say, "You're right, I'm not one of you, I'm better," but I didn't. Because sometimes, silence has more power than anger ever could. I took a slow breath. "Elaine," I said carefully, "our company does have openings, but we require a formal application and a background check like everyone else." She nodded, her face tightening with humiliation. "Of course, I understand." She stood to leave, and for a moment I almost stopped her, almost offered her tea, maybe even comfort. But then I remembered how she had once looked at me not as a person, but as a problem. That night I couldn't sleep. Daniel and I hadn't spoken in over a year. After his mother convinced him to postpone the wedding, things slowly fell apart. He said he needed time to think, to balance family expectations. I gave him that time. He never came back. So seeing Elaine today wasn't just about her. It was a reminder of the wreckage she'd left behind. I thought about calling Daniel, but what would I even say? "Your mother, here asking me for a job? No, not yet." The next morning, I walked into the office early. My assistant had left a file on my desk, an application, Elaine Porter. It was surreal reading her resume. Former CEO of Porter & Co., 20 years of experience, dozens of industry awards, a legacy name that used to intimidate me, now in a manila folder under review. And then, tucked at the back, was her cover letter. It started formally, but halfway through, her tone changed. "I never imagined I would be in this position. I know there are others more qualified, but I'm asking for a chance, not just for work, but for redemption. I made mistakes with people I judged too quickly. I wish I had learned humility sooner." I stopped reading. That last line, it hit me hard, because for the first time, it sounded like she meant it. Later that week, my HR team scheduled her interview. When she walked into the room, she looked different, calm, composed, almost peaceful. "Good morning, Mrs. Porter," my HR lead said. Please call me Elaine, she replied. Her eyes flicked briefly toward me at the end of the table. There was no challenge in her gaze this time, just quiet respect. When the interview ended, I walked her out myself. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, she said softly. You didn't have to. Everyone deserves a chance, I replied. Even me, especially you. Her lips trembled into something close to a smile. Daniel would be proud of you. The name hung in the air. I hadn't realized how much it still hurt to hear it. That night, I finally did what I'd avoided for years. I called Daniel. He answered after a long pause. Babra. His voice was the same, warm, familiar, a little stunned. Hey, I said quietly. I think we need to talk. There was silence, then he sighed. Is this about Mom? I froze. You know. She told me she applied. I didn't think she'd actually go through with it. He sounded tired, older, like life had stripped away his certainty too. She's changed, I said. She had to, he replied. She lost everything. We talked for over an hour. About the past, about how things fell apart, about how neither of us really healed from what she'd done. Before hanging up, he said something I didn't expect. Thank you for not turning your back on her, even after what she did to you. I didn't have an answer, because part of me wasn't sure if I'd forgiven her, or if I was just curious to see what came next. When I walked into work the next morning, my assistant met me at the door. Elaine's here early, she said. She's waiting in the lounge. I took a deep breath. Whatever was coming next, I could feel it wasn't over. When I saw Elaine sitting in the company lounge that morning, it was almost surreal. She sat quietly, legs crossed, dressed in a plain gray suit that was modest but tidy, no diamonds, no pearls, just simplicity, something I never thought I'd associate with her. She stood up the moment she saw me. Good morning, Babra, she said softly. Her tone carried none of the superiority it once had, just a quiet respect and maybe a hint of gratitude. Good morning, I replied. Ready for your first day, as ready as I can be, she said with a faint smile. We walked together to the conference room. Our team, a mix of bright, young creatives, looked up curiously. They all knew who she was, the Elaine Porter. Some whispered, others stared in disbelief. I started the meeting, outlining our next big campaign. Elaine sat and took notes, listening intently, not interrupting, not leading. That alone was shocking. Halfway through the meeting, I asked, Elaine, could you give us your input on the client's previous brand direction? She hesitated for a moment, then spoke. Her feedback was sharp, thoughtful, and deeply insightful. I could see why she once ran a major company. Beneath the arrogance she used to wear, there was real intelligence. When the meeting ended, my team was quietly impressed. She's actually good, one of my designers whispered later. Yeah, I said. She's always been good, just never kind. Over the next few weeks, I watched Elaine rebuild herself piece by piece. She stayed late, asked for help when she didn't understand our new tools, praised junior designers. She even brought coffee for the interns one morning, something no one expected. It was strange watching her transform. She wasn't the queen anymore, she was one of us. And to my surprise, I started to respect her again, not as Daniel's mother, not as the woman who once belittled me, but as a person trying to start over. One evening, after everyone had gone home, I noticed Elaine still at her desk. She was reviewing project drafts, her glasses sliding down her nose. You should get some rest, I said from the doorway. Old habits, she said with a tired smile. When you spend your life chasing perfection, it's hard to stop. I walked over, and for a while we just sat in silence. The city lights shimmered through the office windows, reflecting off the glass table between us. Then she said quietly, I owe you an apology. I didn't move. For what? For everything, she said. For thinking you weren't enough, for trying to control Daniel, for making you feel small when you were already shining brighter than I ever did. Her voice trembled. I'd never heard Elaine sound fragile. I was raised to believe that worth came from titles and family names, she continued. When you came along, confident, independent, and unafraid, I saw everything I had failed to be. I judged you because I envied you." The honesty in her voice disarmed me. For the first time, I saw her not as my enemy, but as a flawed, aging woman trying to face her mistakes. "Thank you for saying that," I said softly. "You don't have to forgive me. I know, but I hope one day you will." I didn't promise her anything, but something inside me softened that night. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Daniel called again. "Hey," he said, "I heard Mom's been working for you." "Yes," I said cautiously. "She's doing well." "She told me that," he replied, his voice full of quiet pride. "She also told me she was wrong about you." I stayed silent. "Babra," he continued, "I know I don't deserve to ask, but would you be open to meeting? Just coffee, no expectations." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say no. The other part, the part that still remembered what it felt like to love him, whispered maybe. "All right," I said finally. "Coffee." That weekend, we met at a quiet cafe near the river. Daniel looked older, wiser. His once polished charm now carried a trace of humility, the same kind his mother had learned. "You look great," he said. "Thanks," I replied. There was an awkward pause, then laughter. It felt strange, familiar, and distant all at once. "Mom told me she's never been happier than she is now," he said. "Working for you changed her. She said you treated her better than she ever treated you." I blinked back the sting of tears. "She's doing the work," I said. "That's what matters." "And you?" he asked softly. "How are you?" "Better," I said, finally. He nodded, his eyes soft. "I'm glad. You deserve it." For the first time in years, there was no resentment. Just two people who had grown in different directions, grateful to have survived the storm. Back at the office, Elaine was waiting for me. She had a small envelope in her hand. "For you," she said. "It's a thank you." Inside was an old photo, Daniel, his father, and a young Elaine smiling at a company event. On the back, she had written, "Success fades, but character doesn't. Thank you for teaching me that." I looked up speechless. She smiled gently. "I don't know how long I'll keep working," she said, "but I want to make every day count, and I want you to know I see you now, Babra, I really do." That night, as I drove home, I thought about how strange life is, how people change, how pain can turn to peace if you let it. And for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel anger toward Elaine, just understanding. Because sometimes, revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting free. It had been 6 months since Elaine started working for me. By then, she was Daniel's mother in the office. She was Elaine, our senior consultant, respected and admired by the team for her calm wisdom and quiet strength. If someone had told me years ago that I'd one day look forward to working with her, I would have laughed. But that's exactly what had happened. We built something between us, not quite friendship, not just forgiveness, but a mutual recognition that came from surviving each other's storms. Still, life wasn't done testing us. One Monday morning, my assistant rushed into my office, looking alarmed. "Babra, we have a problem," she said. "The client for the Crestford account just pulled out." The Crestford project was our biggest contract, the one that kept half the company's budget afloat. I called an emergency meeting immediately. When Elaine walked in, she looked pale. "It's my fault," she said quietly. "I was in charge of client communication. I thought the renewal was secure, but their new director decided to move in-house." You could feel the tension in the room. $500,000 gone. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to ask how she could make such a mistake, but one look at her, the way her shoulders slumped under invisible weight, and I stopped myself. This wasn't arrogance or carelessness. It was human. "All right," I said finally. "Then we do what we always do, adapt." That afternoon, the board met to discuss damage control. As the meeting dragged on, I noticed Elaine was unusually quiet. Finally, she spoke. "There's something else I should tell you," she said, her voice trembling. "The company Crestford hired is run by one of my former colleagues. They reached out to me privately, offered me a consulting role. I turned it down. The room went silent. You turned it down, I asked. Yes, they wanted me to leave your firm and bring your client data with me. I refused. I stared at her. That was a career-saving offer, and she'd walked away from it. Why? I asked. She looked me straight in the eye. Because I've spent too many years building walls. I'm done tearing other people down to stand taller. You gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. I won't betray that. Her voice cracked, but her eyes held steady. The same woman who once sneered at me for not being good enough had just proven she was better than the person she used to be. After the meeting, I found her sitting alone in the break room. She looked exhausted, and yet somehow lighter. You did the right thing, I said, leaning against the doorway. I hope so, she murmured. I've spent most of my life choosing pride over people. Maybe it's time I start choosing differently. I smiled. Maybe it's time you forgive yourself too. Her eyes glistened. You sound like someone who knows what that feels like. I do. 2 weeks later, a surprise email landed in my inbox. Crestford's new director, the same one who'd pulled out, had seen our other campaigns online. They wanted us back. And this time, they requested to work directly with Elaine. When I told her, she broke down in tears. Not dramatic, not loud, just quiet, stunned gratitude. You could have replaced me after what happened, she said. I could have, I replied. But you've already done that to me once, years ago, and I promised myself I'd never be like you. She let out a shaky laugh. You kept that promise better than I ever could have. A few months later, at our company's anniversary dinner, I stood at the podium to give a speech. I looked out at my team, my family, and found Elaine near the front, smiling proudly. When I started this company, I said, I thought success was about proving people wrong. But over the years, I've learned something else. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't revenge, it's redemption. Everyone applauded, but Elaine's eyes told me she understood the message was for her. Afterward, she approached me quietly. You gave me back my dignity, Babra, she said. No, I said softly. You earned it yourself. A few weeks later, I received a handwritten note from Daniel. It read, Thank you for giving my mother a chance to be the person I always hoped she could become. I don't know if we'll ever find our way back, but knowing she's at peace, that's enough for me. And I owe that to you. I folded the letter and placed it in my drawer, next to Elaine's photo and her message. Character doesn't fade. Sometimes I think about how strange life is. How the people who once broke us can end up teaching us what grace truly means. Elaine and I were proof that forgiveness isn't weakness. It's a quiet kind of power. Because in the end, the real twist wasn't that she came to me for a job. The real twist was that she found her humanity, and I found my peace. And maybe, just maybe, that's what being good enough really means.